guys, it's Lisa and Rona here at Quilt Babble Live. We've got great guest speakers. I think we are live. Can I get a thumbs up, Rona, if we are live?
Yep, we're up. We're good.
We're good. So guys, as typical, we're going to give a few minutes to all these lovely ladies and gentlemen to share our Facebook Live to their pages. And we also have another guest that is coming in as we speak. So give us just a moment. Whoop, it's Kathy.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, it is all fabulous. It is all fabulous. So last month, excuse me, Rona, are you good? Are we ready?
Yeah, we're good. I'm sharing.
She's sharing. I'll give Steve a second till he gives thumbs up. I don't want to start
good to go.
We are good to go. All right. So first of all, I want to just say I'm super excited to have three special guests here tonight. And I think you guys know me. I'm Lisa Baker with SewEndipitious, a local quilt shop here in Rock Hill. And my cohort in crime is Rona Herman. Rona. Woo woo. And we will start with Brian. Brian, tell us who you are, who you're with, and what's up?
Hey. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm Brian Wacaster. I am the VP of Sales and owner of the U.S. division of Lewis and Irene. And like I said, it's a pleasure to be here tonight and look forward to sharing a little bit of knowledge, maybe behind the scenes.
I know it's going to be more than a little bit. Tracy, go ahead and introduce yourself. I think most of our Quilt Babble guys and gals know you, but just for case.
I'm Tracy Arismendi from Moda Fabrics. I am a fabric rep representing most of North Carolina, South Carolina, and I border a few other states. And I'm currently in West Virginia. Woo-hoo!
Woo-hoo for West Virginia. Absolutely. And Kathy, I see you are muted, but if you can unmute and tell everybody who you are and all the good stuff.
All right. Yeah, I won't tell you any of the bad stuff.
That's okay, I will.
Shut up, Brian. Brian and I worked together for years, so we know each other very, very well.
Stories.
I know. Yeah, we probably do. So I'm Kathy Phillips, and I work for Springs Creative, and I am the creative director as well as the curator to our Baxter Mill archives. And I'm also a fabric designer for Free Spirit Fabrics.
Rona, how excited are you about these guests tonight and all the knowledge in which they bring?
Oh, I'm super excited because I mean, ever since I first got into the business side of all of this, I've been super fascinated with the whole process, even starting to how the cotton is grown and then the gray goods shipped out, turned into fabric and then printed. And then, yeah, I'm fascinated with the whole process. So I'm super excited.
Absolutely. So guys, if you tuned in last month, you know that last month we talked about pattern design, you know, from concept all the way to finally it getting into your hands and you creating that fabulous quilt. And I heard so many people, and Rona, I'm sure you probably did too, that the feedback after the fact was like, oh my gosh, I had no clue how long it took to get a pattern from concept to the quilt shop and all of the parts and many people that actually touch that pattern before it, you know, gets stamped for sale. So tonight, I'm super excited. We're going to walk through with our panel of experts about fabric and the design and start to finish. Rona, get us started.
Oh, I got to go to my notes now.
Kathy is on the move, y'all.
Okay, so that's all right. Oh, she's muted again.
Wait, I'm cooking. My timer went off. Tonight, ladies, we're
on a Quilt Babble.
Right. Tonight, ladies, we are making stuffed peppers.
Ooh, that sounds delicious. I can almost smell it from here. Okay, so
Rona, wait a minute. That could be a future episode. We'll have Kathy on and we'll have it cooking and quilting with Kathy.
There you go. There you go. My dad would be proud. He's a chef, so he would have been very proud of me sitting there doing a cooking show. Anyways, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so what we thought we'd do, since we have people, our guests on tonight from different sides of the fabric process, if you will, we thought we'd do it kind of like a timeline. So the very first thing that happens, like starting with a fabric design. So Kathy, how does well, first of all, let's do an overall question. Start to finish, how long roughly does a design take from concept till it gets into a quilt shop and somebody can buy it?
Oh, I would say almost 9 to 12 months. Yeah. That's how
Brian,
long it
Tracy,
takes.
does that about seem right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit longer. Maybe sometimes even 12 to 18. It just depends.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Right.
getting ready to say. I know a few designers that are telling me anywhere from 12 months to 24 sometimes.
Yeah.
So let's start out with, like, we have let's just say we're coming up with a fabric design. So Kathy, when you come up with a fabric design, how does that process start? Like, do you just start designing, or how does that process work?
There's so many different processes. I mean, it depends on who you're designing for and who your customer is. And so, for springs, we have a spring line and a fall line. And so we'll kind of look at trends, and we'll also talk to, like, our biggest customers is Joann Fabric, Walmart, and Hobby Lobby. Free Spirit's totally different. I know, sorry. Wait, it pays the bills. I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding, because I know you design premium quilt fabric. So I just wanted to harass you. Move forward.
That's funny. So it will either be through the request from your customer. So even with Free Spirit, like, I would work with the creative director, and she had said, like, she saw kind of like what my aesthetics was. And then she would just say, hey, I need 15 pieces. And she loved the aesthetics that I have. Whereas when you're working with the big retail shops, we'll just call it that, they usually might say, these are the holes we're missing. Like, we have plenty of floral quilts. We have plenty of, especially with our customer, the retail side, it's more for, like, it's less modern who shops at probably the retail shops. And so they want maybe traditional. So then that's how you come up, and then they'll tell you how many pieces you want.
So do you submit, do you submit concept first, or like an actual design?
Actual designs, you start doing designs, at least for us. Yeah, we'll start automatically doing designs, but we will work with our salespeople and kind of show them, like, here's the designs, is what I'm thinking of. So I guess you do kind of like work a little bit about concept, and then you just go for it. Yeah.
So Kathy, and I wasn't even really thinking when we set this together to think about big box. So I'm actually glad you're bringing that whole piece in. So, like, for Springs Creative, do they have designers in-house that are employees, or do they also have independent designers such as like Lewis and Irene and Moda? And anybody else out there, don't shoot us. We're using them as examples because they're here.
We have both. So what we have actually is we have our own in-house designers, and then we also have what we're called artist license. So for instance, Brian knows this, Susan Wingett, who is a really well-known artist. And so she creates her own quilting line. But we just went over like 2 weeks ago to look at, and the way that starts is she starts with her calendar art. So we'll look at all her calendar art, like all the red trucks that she has. She has calendars about the red trucks and florals and birds and you name it. And then we'll say, oh, this would be a great quilting group. And so then we tell her, and since she doesn't have a quilting background, then I'm able to feed to her saying, make the main patterns and we'll help you guide you through the patterns, the coordinates.
Yeah.
Brian, with Lewis and Irene, do you guys only use independent designers, or do y'all have in-house as well?
Actually, most of our design is actually done in-house. So we're a family-owned business, and the daughter, Hannah, is our creative director. And so probably 75%, even 85%, I would say, of our collections are all done in-house. Most all of our collections are actually inspired by travel or where they live. They live in the UK. We're a UK-based company. And so they love to travel. I'm somewhat envious of how much traveling they do. But they constantly are being inspired, and that's kind of where they get a lot of their design inspiration from. And so, and then we'll use a couple of outside guest artisans that we use as
Right.
well to kind of
Now,
supplement.
Tracy, Moda, they have inside and outside, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Probably the most well-known is like Basic Gray. That's one of our in-house.
Oh, okay.
We certainly have a lot of others that design for us.
And Kathy, going back to Free Spirit, is that all independent?
Oh, independent, yeah.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, because Free Spirits in Charlotte. Okay, so we have the concept then, or we have our design, and then you talked a little bit about the approval process, like going through and picking the a full collection, like 15 pieces or what have you. So once the collection is approved, like final approval, we're going ahead with these. What happens next? Because I'm not sure. I've met with Scott Fortunoff from Jaftex, and he kind of briefly went over the actual printing process of the fabrics, but not how it goes from design to print. So I'm curious, which goes first? Is it does it go to print first, or do they do samples first, or like how does that process, the in between, happen?
Who wants to start? I'll
Tracy,
start.
how about you? Do you know that
All right.
process?
Yeah, well, it's all different, right? So I think
All different,
we'll probably have
Each
different
company.
answers. I'll let Kathy start just because I think her answer will be even a little different than
Then-
my answer from Lewis and Irene, even though I kind of pretty much know
Yeah.
both sides. But Kathy, you start.
Yeah, so we're working with buyers. So we are like for the big boxes, we will actually print out just paper. So we're literally printing out paper of all 15 pieces, or really, we don't even go that high. We probably go maybe 6 pieces for
Okay.
that. And we'll print out and have a line review, and we'll show it to the buyer at the big box. And then, and we'll have more than, maybe like they're asking for 3 quilt collections. We usually show them 6 quilt collections, and they'll literally, the buyers will say what they like. They give a lot of opinion, or they'll say, hey, we want this in a different colorway. And then once they like what we do, we go back, we revise it, and then we have to send the prints back, and they're like, okay, ready to go. And then we'll send it to print.
So different, Tracy. I'm giggling because I think about our time together, quilt
Yeah.
shop owner to fabric rep, showing this, me being the buyer. I wish sometimes I could go back and do like Kathy says, can I get this in this color and
Yeah.
this?
Like
And somebody
this?
does it.
Yeah.
So basically, Kathy, it sounds like when you're dealing with one of the big box, and I've known a couple people, maybe me and Brian's had this conversation, of people that have actually are the buyers for, and I will use Joanne for example.
Yep.
So you're really dealing with 1 or 2 people overall corporate, I'm assuming.
Yeah. It's actually the buyer for that specific line. Yeah, for quilting. Yeah,
Right.
That category. Yeah.
category. Yeah.
Brian, don't you have some history in that or something?
Oh yeah.
A
Yeah,
lot.
plenty of history.
Real quick, so everybody
Probably
else
more than I
knows.
do.
So Kathy knows, I was with Springs 20 years. But Kathy and I both cut our teeth though on the bedding side of the business, not the quilting
Yeah.
side of the business.
Yeah.
So half my time was in top of bed and sheeting side of the business when manufacturing was still well alive here in South Carolina. So always like to tell people my first job was third shift supervisor in the flat sheet fabrication area. Y'all, I had 55 women. I was 22 years old. All of them were old enough to be my mom. Back then you still had canteens that had the smoking part of the canteen and the non-smoking. And of course you had to walk through the smoking canteen to get to the non-smoking.
That
So,
is
I mean,
hilarious.
Unbelievable stories. But so it is different. The independent side of the business, that's I like to say I've come to the away from the dark side. Kathy would understand that comment. Simply because in the independent side of the business, you kind of are in control of that. And so that whole piece goes away. Your design team, you make the decision. You are the buyer, essentially. And so once that collection is done, we go straight to engraving. Whereas in the big box side of the world, there are plenty of prints that Kathy and her team may design that may never go to print. It would probably blow people's minds. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kathy, you said something, and of course, being in it, I get, but I think a lot of people don't. And I know for Brian and Tracy, they have us a couple little samples. You mentioned the fabric gets printed on paper, so it's a paper version that gets displayed. Brian, do you have a sample of your, because I know you normally bring me cardstock.
So I've got a handy dandy card. So
Oh, there you go.
our sales card is unique because it's a trifold. And so the collection kind of falls out like this so that you can kind of see the individual pieces. And the important thing, and Tracy knows this too, Kathy knows it too, we all know it. You have to have inspiration. You have to be able to show them what you can potentially do with the collection. Probably 8 times out of 10, that's what's going to sell the collection, is them being able to see because even though quilt shop owners are, a lot of them are, you know, very good sewers, you know, quilters themselves, being able to see an individual piece of fabric is one thing, but being able to see it, what it could be is something totally different. So really having quilt layouts, samples, those kind of things are really kind of critical.
So
well, I'm curious, those are created, those lookbooks or the sample books, do the manufacturers, or I should say the reps, do you guys go out and take pre-orders of the fabrics before it goes to print? Because I know that a lot of them are not printed here in the United States, so it
that's a
takes
good
a while.
Tracy question.
Yeah.
So Moda is a bit different in the sense that we go to the mill twice. The first time that we go to the mill, we are printing all of our headers. So for example, we come around to customers with actual fabric, and this is the actual fabric that they're going to receive in the shops. So this is a December line of Robin Pickens, just for an example, and these are all the headers. So this is the first time at the mill. Then we come around to shops and it's a custom order. So we take the orders from our shops and we bring them to the mill for the second run. So that's how Moda does things. And we have about 5 collections a year. And also in the first run to the mill, we also do our pre-cuts. So that also allows us to go into shops and our charm packs, they can become promo packs. So I can leave this with a customer if they're still deciding on a particular collection. So a little
Tracy,
bit.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I want to say, and Steve, you guys can't see Steve, but as y'all know, Steve's always in the background. I think we've done an interview one time with Jackie McDonald, and I think this is where this information is coming from in my head. Sometimes does the designers, and it may have been something I watched with Tula Pink now that I'm thinking about it, Rona, where the designers, once they design something, they do get a print of their fabric to check color and make sure it's what they want. And then
The samples, yeah.
Yeah, was that Tula, Rona?
Tula's done, I'm sure others have too, but yeah, she's done a couple different on her Tula Tuesdays where she'll show the sample because like if one color is not quite right. Yeah.
And you also get, I get yardage. So for Free Spirit, I get like 15 yards of each pattern of each design. So then I can start creating my own quilts and things and start advertising my own designs.
Okay, that's what I remember hearing something like that. So we might be jumping the gun and Rona smack me back if so, but Kathy, talk about that part, because like Brian was showing these samples that are printed. And then I know sometimes when some of the fabric reps come, they will have samples already made when I know I can't get the fabric for another, 6 months potentially.
Right.
So talk about that part of getting your hands on that fabric in advance to make samples, Kathy.
So, I mean, it's the whole process of doing strike offs. So what they'll do is like they'll run your, for us to approve the strike off. And once we approve it, they'll automatically give us the first 15 yards. And then we get those, the designers. And then it takes that much longer anyways to produce, to run the full, 15,000 yards, whatever they commit to.
You'll have to define strike off for people. They
Oh.
might not know what that means.
So that's your first sample that comes off of the actual printer. Like, your rotary prints, or whether it's if it's digital printing, but it's
Right.
literally just a little swatch or a yard for you to approve your colors. So that's called a strike off. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So,
there's-
well, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say there's a whole other process because we also have on the other side for big box, we have licenses for Disney and Marvel and all of those. And that
Right.
strike off has to be approved by the licensor as well. So it's for everybody whoever designs it has to approve that strike off.
And that's a good thing you brought up, Kathy. It was not on our list, but a lot of people will come into the shop and they will ask for fabric with X, Y, and Z on it. And to try to explain to them that is a licensed, copyrighted, like they get bent. They don't understand. So thank you for bringing that up, that it is a whole nother process.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm gonna jump ahead. We were gonna talk about the printing process first, but real quick, I'd like to talk about, since we did talk last week about pattern designers. And Brian, you were showing in the sample there that there are, sample quilts or things that you can do with those collections. So, do you guys work with pattern designers that are in-house, or would somebody like me, who's an independent pattern designer, how would we come to work with you?
We actually do both, and mainly because you don't want to get too much of the same look, because if you constantly have the same person,
Yes.
designing your quilts, you can kind of get I won't say in a rut, but it will start to look the same, a lot of the same kind of stuff. So we're actually historically, because we started pretty small, we mainly had an in-house person designing our quilts, but that's kind of evolved, and so we're starting to involve a lot of others. And so if there is a pattern designer out there who wants to, maybe they see one of our collections, and they're like, oh my gosh, I love that. I would love to do something with that. The problem with that is by the time they see it, it could be too late, right? Because
Right.
if they're seeing it, the boat
It's
has already
already out.
kind of sailed. So really the key for them would be showing their genre of work, examples of things that they have created. Because really what we're looking for is an aesthetic, right? That really could be, fit a current trend. It could, what's hot in the market, etc. So, we're really looking to see their portfolio, I guess is really what I'm saying.
And once
so
again,
then
you're
we would
talking
discuss with them, and then we would probably say, hey, we've got a few collections that we'd love for you to look at, and see what you think. We feel like that this would be a good fit for your look.
And once again, just so everybody knows out there, not necessarily the panel, I know you guys know, but when Brian's talking about what's trending, you got to remember they're all talking 6 to 12 to 18 months in advance. So they're projecting what's trending.
Yes,
it's always
absolutely. The crazy thing, Christmas is a prime example. All of us just ship Christmas. May and June is a huge Christmas month, believe it or not, to ship new Christmas lines. But before we ship Christmas, we have already designed Christmas for 2024.
true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to give everybody an idea, that's already been designed. The shops haven't quite seen it yet. It is creeping earlier and earlier and earlier when we show Christmas. So it's actually not too far. People start showing Christmas in October. So Christmas 2024, some companies will certainly be showing September, October, I would say.
Well, I know the one shop that I used to work for, they had, we would start seeing Christmas fabric in August, which makes sense because the average, maker needs that time to make
Sure.
gifts for Christmas or their Christmas table runners or towels or what have you. So, yeah, that makes total sense that it would be so early in advance.
Also, not to, before we get off the subject of samples and stuff, everything is such different levels depending your roles, like Brian, when he is showing his card, those samples are put on there. And then you go to like Tracy, and I'm going to use Tracy as an example because Tracy does service our shop here in Rock Hill. She oftentimes is racing to try to get samples to bring to the shop owners. Talk about that, Tracy. Like,
Yeah,
that's
so-
even earlier.
Yeah, so I actually do bring samples to the shop because just like the shop owner, samples help visualize, as you said, and help sell. So for an example, just grabbed one. This is a newish designer for Moda. So this is one of our jelly rolls. And, I'll bring this to the shop, show them a pattern, show them a new fabric, and I'll even kind of bring a trunk show to share with some of my shops if they want to borrow it when the fabric comes. That's another thing that I like to do for shops. So just helps them visualize ways that they can use the collections.
That's
A lot of
interesting that
times-
you have the physical samples where
Yes.
I know Free Spirit, as well as Brian, you were showing the card fold out. Free Spirit has the same, right, Kathy? The
Yeah.
same kind of fold out cards.
Yep. And they'll have two usually designs on the back, kind of like what Brian had showed of the actual design of like a quilt. Yep.
Yeah.
Two
Yeah.
quilt designs.
And Kathy, I just recently, like literally last week, met with Liz for the first time, the local area
Yeah,
Spirit. And I mean, that's not the first time I've met her, but the first time we sat down as a transaction, right? And she, even though her cards are printed like Lewis and Irene, she did have physical quilts.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
For a lot of the collections. And the funny thing, and Tracy knows this too, when the fabric reps come in the shop, the customers that are in the shop, they do feel like it's Christmas every time because they are getting a sneak
Yep.
peek
That's
into
awesome.
what's happening. And then, of course, they get sad because then Tracy or whatever fabric rep takes it away, and
Yeah,
you're
and they
explaining
have
that
to wait.
timeline.
Yeah,
Great,
yeah.
great.
So before we get off samples again, let me bring this up. And this is all coming from what I'm hearing from quilters, and that's who we're talking to tonight, right? Is we're talking to the home quilters. So a lot of times the quilters don't understand because, and I will use Moda as an example, Yori Corioder, or I can use one of Raleigh Blake's, Lori Holt. They've got their fabric and they're doing these videos now because, as we all know, the pandemic changed the world, right? And some of these designers was never up into the quilters world like they are now. And so Kathy, like you're saying, if you guys are getting your fabric as a designer so far in advance and you guys start showing it online, that creates another, they feel like us shop owners are behind the times and we're just not getting this fabric in. So that's why I was excited about tonight. So you all that are in the know can tell them we're not holding back the goods.
Sometimes I feel like because they want our videos early, because that happened to me, and I was just like, it doesn't come in until August. And so I'm like, I'm going to do a video in January. These people are going to forget about me by August, So it is, but they want you as soon as you get your fabrics to start, advertising. So yeah, I can see how that can be as a quilter going, okay, I want it now,
Well, that's like one of my very first patterns that I wrote for sale, was a line of fabric that I saw the unboxing. This was when all this stuff first started.
Yeah.
And it was a Mr. Domestic collection, and he unboxed all 16 of these two adjacent lines that he had. And of course, these were his strike-offs that he was going to do for his samples. And so I had to wait like 8 months before I could finally get my hands on it, because I already had the pattern. As soon as he showed them online, the pattern popped in my head and it was like, oh, see, now I gotta wait.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know then, of course, it was at the very beginning of my career in this area. So I didn't know that I could approach, you know, them at the time he was with Art Gallery. And as a designer, you can, you know, approach them and say, hey, I got an idea.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time. So
Right.
it's
So the other thing I'll tell you about that is that the way we do it is almost all of our email marketing is directed to shop owners.
Mm.
All of our Instagram is more marketed to the end consumer.
Yeah.
And so that kind of helps separate that a little bit so that we're not,
Oh, that's
while we're flashing stuff to the quilt shops, because it's our selling season, we need them to buy for the future. What's flashing on Instagram and Facebook is more what's shipping currently, just so you don't have that gap and that frustration, because we're also really funny about our quilt patterns. All of our quilt patterns are free. They go on our website. However, you're not going to find that quilt pattern until we ship that collection.
Mm.
Because trust me, the last thing you want is to put a quilt pattern up that people can't find the fabric right then and there. So we actually don't release any of our patterns until we're actually at a time of shipping that actual fabric.
And I think that's kind of common for the most part, which is good for sure. But once again, they see some of these designers doing these videos that are showing, you know, maybe the free pattern or whatever. And it is definitely, you know, crazy. Let's talk real quick. So like when Tracy and, you know, I'm lucky that Brian is here local. So Brian actually, I get to see Lewis and Irene collections straight from Brian and not a fabric rep. But when the rep comes, they're not the only rep. Like right here, I mean, not that Springs Creative won't sell to me, they're about the big box, but let's pretend for a minute Kathy's representing Free Spirit. So technically we've got 3 fabric companies here, Lewis and Irene, Moda, and Free Spirit. That's only 3 out of so many. At any given time, I don't even know because I don't pay attention. I'm too busy oohing and on. But Brian, how many collections typically do you show a quilt shop or show me?
So we release twice a year. So when I'm in a season, I'm probably at 20 collections.
Wow.
And what about you, Tracy?
Yeah, we're somewhere around 20 to 25, and we come around 5 times a year.
wow.
And then Kathy, do you know Free Spirits, about how many they're showing? I want to say she probably showed me about 20.
I can tell you that with Free Spirit, I don't know the exact numbers, but I could tell you just with the K Facet Collective alone, you're going to hit that 20 something mark just with them. Like there's so many.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm bringing this out is because this is another thing we constantly get calls of, do you carry this? Do you carry that? Do you carry this? People really have no clue how many collections are out there and presented at any given time. And Brian, you made a good point earlier. There's a bunch of stuff that never makes it to print.
Right.
I don't know
There's
how you
also, I wanted to ask real quick too about the separation, because there's 2 different types of fabric that I'm not sure a lot of people know. There's the lines that come out and then they end or they get discontinued, and then they have the ones that are constant, like the basics collections and stuff like that. So how would somebody know, or is there a way to know like which ones are which for the end user? Or how could they find out?
They come and ask me in the quilt shop and then they hate me because I say sorry, Moda's not going to reprint that. Sorry, Lewis and Irene's not going to reprint that.
I would dare say, I think I probably can speak for the majority of the quilting world. Most of what gets printed is one and dones, simply because you're constantly being requested, or the need for newness, freshness, trend, whatever it's ever changing, right? Does everybody have basic lines? Absolutely. But your basics are going to be more your typical blenders, your tonals, stuff like that. Those are things that, you know, most companies are going to have a staple of. that that will indeed get reprinted. Now, I'm not to say any of us, we have a line that goes crazy. Absolutely. Have I known of us to go to reprint on something that has went nuts? Sure. Absolutely.
Battery's low.
But that is not
Right
what
there.
happens most of the time.
Kathy's got to check her peppers, everybody.
No,
Um,
my battery's low on my computer.
Oh. I will say, Rona, what I have noticed in the shop is quilters that have been quilting a long time, like, you know, Kathy, Tracy, you, myself, Brian, I don't remember if you quilt, so I'm going to leave you out of that. But the ones that have quilted for a season, they kind of know you better get it when you see it or it's gone. And they know they can get grunge over and over, or they can get bumbleberries over and over, that kind of thing. Or, you know, like you were saying, you know, Tula's basic, you know, her polka dots or stripes, whatever. I think it's more the new quilters that I find get frustrated because they just didn't know and didn't understand. And they just thought, I seen it and now 6 months later, I want it. Why is it not here?
Yeah.
I really do think it's the new quilters, but they learn real fast. Once they lose one that they loved and they didn't get in time, they were great. It's just like the pre-cuts, like Tracy said. So Moda does they ship those pre-cuts out early sometimes. What is that
And
called?
that's why, because again, if you go back to the 2 runs at the mill, the first run is my header. So all these samples that I'm showing shops, and it also is our pre-cuts. That's why those are available first. We also have something that we call sample spree that we do with the shops, where you can get pre-cuts a month early to the shops to make your samples. And we also have a sample department where you can get sample yardage to make samples ahead of time. So that's the first run at the mill. And then the second, we go with the custom orders. And I think I just wanted to stress that, you know, that's 6 months from now, you know. We do the custom orders and you're receiving it 6 months from now. So right now I'm showing a May collection and that won't be shipped till November, December.
Yeah. So, okay. So continuing with that, then we can talk about the actual printing process, because there's different types of printing and there's different types of fabric. Like I know I mentioned the K Facet Collective, their fabric is a different type of, it's still quilting cotton, but anyone who's used it notice that it's a little bit lighter than your average quilting cotton. So I'm not sure which one, Tracy, do you know which one Moda does as far as their printing, if it's screen printed or digital?
We actually do screen, but we have one collection right now that we're showing from Kathy Holden that is a digital collection. So yeah, that's
So does anyone want to talk about the difference between the two? For those that have had no idea.
Yeah,
Let Kathy do that. Kathy.
Yeah, I guess I can tell you the difference. So screen print, of course, each color that's in your design is a screen. So think about like when you used to do screen prints for t-shirts. So, but this is rotary. So each color is like, and screen is literally a rotary screen and it's 45 inches long. So think of it, if it's a design that has 12 colors in it, then you have 12 screens that are literally going, you know, down the factory. The more colors you have, the more expensive your fabric is. And this takes a lot of ink. It takes a lot of, it costs because you have to engrave the screens for each color, because that's how the ink goes through. For digital printing, you can have millions of colors. So what you're starting to see with digital printing is that, and then literally the printer has all the ink kind of inside, just a little capture. So you're saving a lot of ink as well. But you can have so many colors. So if you see watercolor, shiboris, batik kind of looking things, they can all be digitally printed, because it's very difficult to do screen printing on watercolor. You can do it, but you have to have a certain, you know, the ombre of the color, the softness of it. So that's why you're starting to see a lot more digital printing. And the hand.
Yeah, right. So screen printing, like Kathy's saying, you're basically limited to how many colors you can have. I mean, 16 or 18.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
That's a
really
lot,
the
yeah.
extreme, okay?
Yeah.
And if you're printing 16 colors, that's a lot
Yeah.
for a screen print. But your high-end quilting is going to be that, I would say. Whereas with digital, you don't have that color limitation.
Right.
But there is a difference, you know, with saturation. I mean, essentially, to me, the easiest way to explain to someone who's not in the business is when you digitally print, all the color sits on top of the fabric.
Yes.
Whereas in screen print, it's more penetrated. You get a little bit more depth with the screen print. Why would you want to digitally print versus screen print? The color advantage is number one. But also from a manufacturing perspective, it's there is very low minimums. In other words, we can do small print runs. Whereas screen printing, pretty much, you know, you need to lock in at 3,000 yards or 1,000 yards with 3 different colors of the same design. Digital print is a lot different. You can do 100 yards. There are people out there doing 10 yards.
Yeah.
You know, most of us who are in the business, though, I would dare say, you know, we start at 200 yards. So again, there's an advantage there. And, you know, the technology has significantly improved in the last 2 to 3 years. I can't really imagine what it will be in the next, you know, 5 years. I would dare say they will probably improve it to the point that they will probably close that gap in how much you can tell between a screen print maybe and a digital.
Yeah.
I think that's the penetration is probably one of the big things that they're probably working on.
Yeah, I also noticed, well, it's also the ink. So like it's pigment ink or you can do fiber reactive ink on digital printing, and the fiber reactive, you do feel the hand is much better. The pigment, like Brian says, it sits on top and it's kind of a little bit more stiff. What I noticed the difference in screen printing and when I'm working with the fabrics, in screen printing, when you rip it, it rips perfectly. And I feel like when you rip the fabric in digital, you could see the white going through some of the lines. That's what I noticed. So I try never to rip it because I tried it and then I was like, oh my God, you know, so I really I can't rip my fabrics when they're digital print.
Kathy, I'm like you as a quilter. The digital prints are beautiful, do not get me wrong, but as a quilter, and maybe it's because, you know, none of us like to change, but I notice with the digital print, if you nick it in the least little bit way, like you said, that white line will go through. And if I've spent a lot of hours on a quilt and it is done and I'm just quilting it and that happens, I am in tears. Now, I know we've not been in the digital fabric print world for long, but one of the questions that I do get asked, and my answer is simply, we don't know yet. And that's because I don't know. But what is the longevity of that color versus a screen print? You know, the wear and tear. Like if people want to make heirloom quilts, you know, they're hoping that's going to be handed for generation to generation. What's this digital printing fabric? You know, do we know yet? Like what, have they been wash tested? Like 1,000 washes, the color still 90%, or?
My understanding, it lasts, well, because we do digital print for the upholstery for the home line. And so we have like 12,000 rubs type thing. I don't know. And that's just rubbing. I'm not sure of like polyester when you do digital print on and I know we don't quilt on polyester, but that lasts forever because it's a dye sublimation, which means the dye gets into the fibers and so it never leaves. Brian, I don't know. Do you know like what the longevity?
Yeah, I mean, I would think I kind of lean what you're saying. I think it's a technology that's moving, to be honest. And so honestly, if you have some of the first digital prints, is the color fastness probably what it is today? No, Lisa, would be my answer.
That's what I thought.
But I think it is continually what my anticipation is, that digital will indeed become more dominant.
Yeah.
You know, it may take a while for that. I don't have a magic ball that, you know, I could tell you, you know, 3 more years, most things will be digital. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but certainly I would say that the movement with digital They're
Right.
constantly inventing new digital printing equipment.
Mhm.
So,
I
for
did
instance,
tell-
it used to be that you could not digitally print metallic at all. Now
Yes.
there's machines that will allow you to lay metallic down in addition to the digital print.
I
Wow.
do
So, I
tell
mean,
people
glow in the
too-
dark, you used to not be able to digitally print
Oh.
glow in the dark. Now you can. There's
Right.
all of these things that are changing.
I do tell people also when they're asking me questions from digital to screen, screen print, that one of the reasons, as well as now we can have all these major different colors, like Kathy and Brian said, added into versus how you're handicapped in screen, it is an environmental thing as well because of the dyes. So I do know that's what's pushing that needle
Absolutely.
forward.
Absolutely.
digital
You're right about
printing.
that. That's a great point, Lisa.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
I've been to factories where the inks are in big buckets and they're just, and whereas.
Like drums.
Yeah,
Imagine
Yeah.
like an oil drum,
Yeah.
but it's all ink.
Yeah.
So we have a question from our audience. Marie says, do you as manufacturer reps see the price per yard to the consumer increasing over the next 6 to 12 months, or has it stabilized for a while? So that's an interesting question. Only like from my perspective, I'm not a rep, but as a business owner working with a lot of cotton, I think a lot of that goes to the price of the cotton itself keeps
Yeah.
going up,
Yeah.
along with everything else in the process.
Yeah.
What would you guys think about that?
Absolutely. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it all has to do with the price of cotton and where that is. It's a commodity, just
That's
like
what I was gonna say,
gasoline
commodity.
is, just like anything else.
Yep, yep,
It can go up and down based on demand.
Yep.
And so if, let's say everyone thinks that we're in the midst, even though no one has really said we're maybe in a pullback right now. Therefore, theoretically, and we've seen some, the price of cotton will start dropping, okay? The minute the market senses that consumer is spending again, you'll see cotton go right back up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it does fluctuate a lot. The other big thing with cotton is, keep in mind, cotton is grown outside. It's
Mhm.
very susceptible
Mhm.
to weather. Are
Yeah.
there monsoons that
Mhm.
wipe out crops? Are there droughts? Anything like that can have a huge impact on the price of cotton. But I think in the last few years where you've seen the price increase, I will tell you, one of the big factors is not just the cost of the raw cotton, but the freight.
The freight, the
Freight
ship.
and shipping has been a huge driver of cost within post-pandemic,
Mhm.
Well, yeah, so
surviving the pandemic,
I know a lot of people may not know as well that on the printing side, like we were just talking about screen printing and digital printing, it's not done here in the States. It's
Predominantly not.
done overseas. So the shipping,
The
like you're
majority is,
talking
you're
about, you're
right.
talking about shipping tons and tons of cotton overseas to have it, finished out and then printed and all that stuff, and then shipping it back. So yeah, the freight costs, would imagine is a huge addition to that.
So
that
I would say
cost.
the big cotton producers still are China, Pakistan, India, US.
Yeah.
Those are the big
Yeah.
four.
And with that being said, Rona, you pointed out something we didn't talk about earlier when we were talking about from design concept to the quilter's hand. Part of that time frame, we did talk about the design getting approved, the reps coming out and selling, but it's also not just printing the fabric, but that shipment time. And Brian, you're probably the best person here to even talk about that because you do work, you're the VP in the USA for Lewis and Irene, but your entire company is over in another country. So everything's coming over on the boat, right?
That's right. Everything's coming. Everything we produce is out of South Korea. We only produce in one factory, simply because we want that consistent quality. Okay. And we never want, when our customer feels a Lewis and Irene fabric, they'll feel the same thing every time from us. But now I will tell you the interesting thing was, yes, I'm constantly, like for now, I'm watching containers get loaded that are exiting Korea. I get a report daily that I have to monitor. I also have to monitor what's going on in all of the different shipping routes. Is there potentially strikes at any port that I might bring my goods through? I have to watch that. Are there container shortages? During COVID, the container shortage was massive.
Yeah.
We couldn't even find a container to put your goods on. Or there was a chassis shortage. In other words, the whole system got out of whack. We had too much on one side of the world and not enough on the other. And so you don't just snap your fingers when something like that happens and it just resolves itself.
Right.
It takes months to resolve this stuff. So, and then as a manufacturer, as an importer, I have to wait. There could be a backlog at your port. Everything that I bring in comes, I used to bring it in through New York. I no longer do that and truck it now, simply because New York got really congested during COVID. So I switched and brought it down to Savannah and Charleston, which is closer to me anyway. However, Savannah Port is has gained so much popularity, mainly, and I don't want to bore people with details, because there's been such a threat for a strike on the West Coast. So everybody got scared and started diverting all their goods to the East Coast. So Savannah got backed up. So I'm constantly looking at how many days is my container going to sit just to get into the port. Then you got to understand these ships have probably 1,000 containers on them. Where your container is, I always laugh. I said, there's no doubt in my mind, I'm always on the bottom. So,
The bottom, yeah.
Right.
you know,
And then
then you have to pray that you don't get pulled for a random customs.
Truckers is a good.
That just
truckers
happened to
Kathy.
me. It hadn't happened to me in a couple of years, but I got a random pull for a customs audit. Then it has to go to an off-site location. It has to be inspected to make sure that you're importing under the current tariff code, that you're paying the proper tax on. Then you have to coordinate with an inland trucking company that has to go pick this container up and bring it to your warehouse. So there are a lot of moving pieces.
Well, what I'm hearing is, first of all, guys, we've got about 8 minutes left, but what I'm hearing, and I'm hoping our Quilt Babble listeners are hearing, from the time that a concept fabric design is running around in a fabric designer's little creative brain, such as Kathy, to the time that it actually lands into our quilter's hand, once again, the process has so many moving parts that is the reason why it does take so long. The price is not, 20 cents a yard and so forth. The same thing that we learned about patterns for our guest tonight when we talked last month about pattern design. People are like, I can't believe I've got to pay $12 for a pattern or something, but they couldn't understand that, there's pattern testers, there's this, there's that. It's the fabric that is being used to make the samples that you may have to scrap it and start all over because something wasn't working. So, that's one of the things that Rona and I wanted Quilt Babble to do, is really educate everybody on all the things that they don't see. And I think tonight, Rona, do you agree that these three have really showed us a lot that I didn't even know? And I have a quilt shop.
You have to hug your fabric now. Like when you see it, you just have to love it because of what it's all been through.
Kathy, that's why we pet on it. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Just think of the journey it's gone through just until it got to you, and then
Well, in the truth, let me say one last thing, because I feel like I babbled pretty good there, and I'm not sure I gave Marie the answer she wanted, but my best guess, Marie, keep in mind that the cotton crop has not been harvested yet, okay? So to answer your question, for 6 to 12 months, it's not quite been harvested. I will tell you that overall the pricing has peaked for now. It totally will depend on what the crop looks like as it comes in. Right. Are there storms that destroy part of the crop? Are there droughts? Are there floods? Whatever. There could be a lot of things that could impact it. But I would want to give you a little bit of maybe hope that I do think we probably have peaked, hopefully. So I think that's the hope of all of us.
Well,
Yeah.
let's not talk about the negative of the price. Rona, show it. Let's end on all happy notes. Rona, show everybody here in Quilt Babble land the quilt that you were showing Brian and I. Oh, you can't. Never mind. It's a surprise.
That's going into a book that's coming. I can't show it yet.
Yes, I forgot. I was so excited because it's got Lewis and Irene fabric in it, and it's so fabulous. With that being said, then didn't you say you had a big announcement tonight?
Oh, I do. So for those of you that have been watching us previously and that you know about the Iceland tour that I'm leading next month, we officially have gotten word that we are doing the tour again next summer.
Ooh.
But this time we're doing the same 9 days in Iceland and then another 6 days in London and Birmingham, which will include the Festival of Quilts in Birmingham and going to
Wow,
places
awesome.
like Liberty of London and all of that. So if you sign up for my newsletter, I'm sure I'll be posting. I have the dates, which are going to go out in the next newsletter. And as soon as we get the final numbers for cost and all that, I'll be sending that out as well. So if you didn't get in on this tour, you're definitely going to want to go on the next one.
Cool.
As you can tell, Rona, the traveling quilter, is super excited about another trip.
Well, yeah.
Kathy, do you have any new or anything you can tell us, new designs in the works with Free Spirit, or is everything hush hush right now? What's going on in your world?
I think
If you wanna-
the next line's coming out in August. So the first ones were really inspired by eco printing. So that's a whole other story. And this one was a little bit more about watercolor florals and things like that. But yeah, but I'm
And
going
what's the name of your collection that's coming?
Katrinka, well, it's called Katrinka Collection. So the, oh my God, you're giving me, it was Walk into the Woods and now it's, I think, watercolor floral or something. Oh my God, I can't remember right now. I've been working on, at Springs right now, and I have all these other designs in my head right down and the names. It's kind of hard to switch, but
But if you have not seen Kathy's fabrics yet with the Freak Spirit, they're gorgeous and
Oh, thank
very
you.
unique. And I absolutely adore them. You should check them out.
Thank you. I'll have to send you some fabric so you can make
Oh,
some
please.
patterns for me.
You're talking to Miss Pattern Designer there. She would be all about that.
Oh, yeah.
Tracy, tell us what's going on in Moda world that we should be super excited about.
Yeah, so we have new collections coming out mid-July, and some of our we have Kansas Troubles, we have Debbie Maddie, we have Three Sisters, some French General, so some of our favorite designers coming in July. So
Absolute Moda.
Awesome.
Woo, woo.
yeah, and I can say as far as pricing, I've been with Moda for probably about 15 months. Our prices haven't gone up, so that's great. And I don't think we're also the most expensive fabric, so that's great too.
Now, as soon as she said that, you know what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, she's going to open her email and there's going to be a message from the CEO that says, prices of fabric is.
Yeah, could be. Could be.
We're like, but Tracy said.
Yeah, right? Who am I? Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Brian, so you say you're flying out tomorrow to go to?
H&H. So it's a craft and fabric show that's in Chicago. So we'll be up there tomorrow. It's a fairly new show for the US. H&H is fairly big in Europe. And so they are, I think this is the second or third year of the show here in the US. And so, they're really growing. I'm at least excited. Chicago is a different area than Quilt Market typically is in. I would think, it's got a major airport, so it should be fairly easy for folks to get to. So we'll be interested to see what the foot traffic's like, what customer sentiment is like, how everybody's feeling about things.
There's a lot more designers going this year because last year a lot of the pattern
designers. There's a lot more
were
fabric there this year
keeping,
than typically. It's been typically more heavily yarn, machine embroidery, hand embroidery, those kind of things. So they're really making a push to try to get fabric in there.
Yeah.
And that's something we didn't
Moda will
talk
be there.
about in the middle of this whole circle of this fabric is you guys go to Quilt Market and do this whole big display and everything that's involved in that. We didn't even touch on that, but that's a whole nother component
trade
for sure.
shows. Yep, all of the trade shows, which is good because we used to just have Market, I think was really the only like big nationwide trade show for the quilting market. So it's nice to have H&H and kind of have that competition. Because I kind of have my fingers in a lot of different sides of the industry, I'm really curious to see how it grows because it looks like a really good show. I'm hoping to be there next year. We'll see.
Yeah, Moda will be there, and also very excited because I'm from Raleigh that we'll have QuiltCon right in Raleigh.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
Yep.
Yep.
And when is that, Tracy? Remind everybody.
Oh, QuiltCon is in February.
February.
Yep.
Got to start planning now.
That's right.
Yeah.
I got an extra room, Lisa and Rona. Bunk
Sorry,
bed.
John and Kathy, y'all didn't get invited to that PJ party. Which I don't know if Kathy's gonna cook for everybody.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah.
Kathy, you're invited.
I only know 2 recipes. No, that you don't want me to cook.
Y'all have been so wonderful tonight. I just want to say thank you all for taking time out to be experts on the Quilt Babble this month. And of course, you know, once we rope you in once, we will find excuses to rope you back again. Tracy, I don't even know how many times Tracy's here, but every month I feel like I'm like, Tracy, what state are you in? What are you doing? Can you be
I
here?
wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for inviting me. This is awesome. First quilt babbler. So thank you.
You did fantastic.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Rona, any parting words tonight for our audience before we go?
The only thing I would say is just to encourage everybody to check out, obviously most people are familiar with Moda, but definitely check out Lewis and Irene and check out Kathy's fabric with Free Spirit. It's phenomenal. And then also go to the websites because the websites for the manufacturers like Lewis and Irene and Moda and all that, they have the swatches on for the like upcoming lines that are coming soon, when they're going to be shipping, all that kind of stuff is up there. So you can get lots of inspiration from the website.
And Rona, you remind me of something that I wanted to say tonight. Last month, I can't even remember who all we had here for pattern design conversation, but I did get some feedback that our viewers really did support our pattern design channel and actually went out to their website and purchased some of their patterns. And they did send emails to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I did forget about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know Andy was one of them.
Yeah,
The
definitely
True Blue, yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah.
Y'all are gonna kill me, but Tracy and Brian both had giveaways for tonight, but it's 8:03. I botched it. So maybe they will let their giveaways linger for next month, and we'll come up with a good something for you guys to win some Lewis and Irene and some Moda fabric. I know y'all won't hate us for that. But for now, we want to say goodbye, and y'all have a great one. See you next month here on Quilt Babble Live with Lisa and Rona.
Thank you.